Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Student trustee Migliaccio.
Here.
Student trustee Malik.
Here.
Trustee Withrow. Trustee Napoli Bellarice.
Here.
Trustee Gonzalez Brito.
Here.
Trustee Quinlan.
Here.
Trustee Johannes.
Here.
Trustee Polk.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the?
Trustee Gonzalez Ewan.
Yeah, I'm here too.
Already said here, even the.
I was expecting the name in it.
Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Okay, the motion was made by trustee Gonzalez Ewan and the second was made by trustee Pope. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Student trustee Parmigiani. Oh. Migliaccio.
Yes.
Student trustee Malik.
Yes.
Trustee Withrow. Trustee Johannes. Trustee Gonzalez Ewan.
Here, yes. That one.
Trustee Napoli Bellarice.
Here.
Trustee Delphine Pope.
Yes.
Trustee Quinlan.
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez Brito. Motion passes.
Item 1.5, we'll now move to public comments. Board Clerk, do we have any public comments tonight?
First, we have Leslie Blackie, followed by Blakey, I apologize, followed by Laney Gassis.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Chancellor, college presidents, and members of our campus community. I am Leslie Blakey, and I am the DAS Senate President, and I just wanted to make a few comments. First of all, I wanted to just celebrate not only you coming to Laney, but also the open house that we ended up having with cosmetology and Fab Lab today, as well as the groundbreaking for the Library and Learning Resources Center, the kickoff construction for the locker room renovation and theater modernization at Laney. This is actually completing or starting so many projects that we have celebrated. I'm just going to work backwards from today. At the end of September, we got to have the ribbon cutting at COA of Transportation Technology Center. Earlier in September at Merritt, we had the opening of the horticulture building, and BCC had its groundbreaking for its second building in April of 2024. And it's just so exciting to see this work that is supported by the Measure A and Measure G funds, bond funds. So we're so grateful to the community for supporting the Peralta Community College with these bond measures. And also I want to just shout out to COO Greg Nelson, Director BC Hoff, and Amy Marshall, as well as their outstanding crew for moving forward these construction projects, because it's wonderful for our students, but it's also really exciting for faculty to see these things that we've dreamed for so long to be moving forward. So I wanted to acknowledge that. As the DAS VP Tom Renbarger reported out at the last meeting, the shared governance committees and colleges admin district are up and running. But I wanted to let the Board of Trustees know that the district committees, that district facilities, district technology, SSEMC, holistic safety and wellness, and the PBC all have as their faculty tri-chair a faculty senate president, which facilitates the communication when issues come up at DAS that are part of a particular committee. That committee might have discussed it, and because the Senate presidents are there, we get this communication back and forth, which is really, really exciting. And it also benefits us all as we do the regular work of the colleges and the district as we embark on the work of the transformation task forces this week. And I also really want to shout out to these hardworking Senate presidents. I don't think people understand that in addition to teaching classes, they have approximately 15 to 20 hours of
20
meetings
seconds.
a month between their college senates, college committees, DAS, and the district committees. So as a team, we work together on improving the communication and working towards solutions for the challenges we face at PCCD. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, trustees, presidents, Laney College community. I see a lot of us came out today. I'm Eleni Gastis. I'm the faculty senate president here at Laney College. And I'm super proud to be here once again as the faculty senate president for the second time. I started my own academic journey here at Laney, actually in the B quad right over there. You might have passed it, as a student who really didn't know which direction to take. Now I'm the advisor to the district's only student-run publication, The Citizen, which just earned another 7 awards this past weekend at the Journalism Association of Community Colleges Conference. And some of you might not know that this college is actually named after a journalist, Joseph C. Laney. Our students come to this college to find their path forward. They take part in our career and technical education programs, our other instructional programs, of course, also excellent, take advantage of the support services offered by Student Services. There are faculty at every single turn of their experience that I'm proud to represent in one of the most intentional and governance forward experiences that I've had since I've been here. We're really trying to make this work. Our CTE programs here provide a seamless, industry-aligned pathway for students to join the workforce, and our hardworking faculty propels state-of-the-art curriculum and ingenuity that makes me so proud to represent them. If you're not already familiar, our governor has specifically called out CE Pathways, for example, as a link to a prosperous future for the state of California. Speaking of curriculum, tomorrow the Regional ASCCC Curriculum Institute will be held in the Best Center, and faculty will gather from around the region to talk about the latest initiatives and challenges in curriculum statewide. We have folks here who are making moves, to put Laney on the map, really. And I also want to give some kudos to Hope Lane, who's our classified Senate president, who's currently director at the California Community College Classified Senate. So welcome once again to our college. This is really the place where students can dream, flourish, and succeed. Thank you.
Next, we have Heather Cisneros.
Good evening, folks. There we go. My name is Heather Cisneros, and I co-chair the Council on Instruction Planning and Development, which is our district-wide curriculum committee. And so what I wanted to do is just kind of give you guys an overview of what are we doing? What is CIPD? What do we do, especially in relation to the transformation that we're working on, the 6 projects that have been identified with the chancellor, and what's our role in all of this? So in thinking about what we're going to be doing, of the 6 projects, conducting course and program assessments to identify duplication, that's something that the task force of the Student Success Enrollment Management Committee is working on. And I thought, you know what? How do we make their life easier? So we thought we would have our year be curriculum cleanup. So we are part of the pruning. We are going to lay the foundation of getting rid of, we're going to deadhead the rose bush is basically what we're looking at. So in doing that, we also have regular regulations that we need to apply to and stay with. So we've got this multi-prong project set that we're working on. So in the way of pruning, we have curriculum cleanup. We want to develop a district-wide policy on deactivating courses that haven't been offered in 2, 3, 4 years. They're still in the catalog and they're not being offered. So we want to clean that up. We want to have some sort of justification for courses that are not part of any program or degree. Sometimes you do have to have those for certain certification in CTE, but we need to develop a reason why. And if there isn't a true justification, maybe it's time for those courses to go. In the way of streamlining for student success, we are finding that our grade options for the same course offered at all colleges are different. So they think they can take pass, no pass at one college, come to find out they can't. We also want to streamline the alignment of the content that is in our courses. We are finding that articulation for a course might only happen at one of 4 colleges. So when the student goes to another college and they think it articulates, it doesn't. So we want to be streamlining for student success. We also have new and updated regulations that are occurring. We are now in a position where we are going to be charged with providing examples of how course outline of records, excuse me, incorporate principles of inclusion, diversity, equity, anti-racism, and accessibility into our course outline of record. That's a
20
huge
seconds.
project. And we also need to have a process for universal design for learning. So in all of this, we are pruning. We are doing curriculum cleanup. And I just want to make a note that with all that said, we have a lot that's going on. We want to be a part of it. We are Team Peralta. We know that. We are the championship team to do this. CIPD, we may have to go into extra innings, but I'm in for the long haul, like I was last night. It's grit, it's perseverance, it's students, and it's Team Peralta. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other public comments.
Thank you. Now I have the presentation on district-wide equity and real college survey results.
Thank you, Board President Quinlan. Good evening, trustees, community. It's a pleasure to be here tonight at Laney College for our Board of Trustees study session. Earlier today, it was truly gratifying to see Laney College entering the next phase of transformation as we celebrated the groundbreaking of a new library and learning resource center, along with the kickoff of the construction of a modernized theater and locker room facility. These projects were years in the making, and if I might just take a point of personal privilege to say, my first week as president at Laney College years ago, I actually traveled to Sacramento with then head librarian Evelyn Lord to advocate for state funding for the Library and Learning Resources project. So these projects are supported both by state bond facility funding as well as that from our local voters. And so want to again thank everybody. And these really were projects that are years in the making and remind us that transformation doesn't happen overnight. It happens through steady faith in what is possible, and it is a testament to what we can accomplish when we remain steadfast in our commitment to students and the future of our colleges. And so first, I want to just take a privilege of saying thank you to President Upsada, really the district and college facilities and custodial teams, and everybody from our marketing and communications and public relations teams, and particularly Janice Brown, Judy May, and Hope Lane for all the touches that they did to make sure both events today went off well. And so glad to be here tonight. So thank you to the Laney College community for so warmly welcoming us tonight here. So before we begin this item, trustees, I want to start by expressing my deep appreciation for all of the hard work happening across our colleges around student equity, achievement, and basic needs support. These efforts reflect the heart of who we are as a district, committed to ensuring that every student, regardless of background or circumstance, has the opportunity and support to thrive. The Student Equity and Achievement Program, established in Ed Code 78222, was created to advance guided pathways in the statewide goal of eliminating equity gaps. Our 2025 through 2028 student equity plans build on that work and align with the Vision 2030 goals from the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office. And it is sort of an example of the iterative transformation that I was talking about early with the groundbreaking that we were doing. The plans focus on setting goals to eliminate disproportionate impact, closing equity gaps, strengthening transfer outcomes, and expanding access to comprehensive, equity-focused student education planning. In support of the board's goals, your 25-26 goals, tonight the colleges will share highlights of their new student equity plans that are going through their governance processes now, and the District Office of Research and Planning will present results from the Real College California survey, which looks at student basic needs across the colleges and the district as a whole. Together, these presentations bring forward the data, insights, and strategies that will help us continue to remove barriers, deepen equity, and improve outcomes for all students. And so I'm really pleased by the incredible team. So let me offer you all my gratitude even before you begin to the incredible team across the colleges and the district who've come together to present to you tonight. So I'll welcome up President David M. Johnson to begin the presentation. Thank you.
You can clap. So good evening, President Quinlan, Board of Trustees, Chancellor Gilkerson, colleagues, and community members. On behalf of my fellow presidents and presenters, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share some critical information, data, and solutions as it pertains to supporting equitable outcomes for our students. I believe that everyone here is committed to the idea that every student, as the chancellor noted, irrespective of their background or circumstance, deserves the chance to be successful. And yet our data continues to show insistent gaps in student persistence, success, and transfer. And even when there are no gaps among the groups, the overall success rates are generally lower than we would like. So each college has developed strategies aimed at addressing our areas for improvement, but we also understand that isolated initiatives are not enough. Rather, it's about transforming how we serve, support, and teach students every day and at every level. It's about meeting their educational needs as well as their material ones. And we'll underscore that point a little later in the presentation when we unpack the PCTV real college data findings. But in the end, tonight reflects our collective commitment to ensuring that the success of every student is not left up to chance, but rather it is woven in the very fabric of everything we do in Peralta. There we go. We good, guys? Achieving equitable outcomes. There we go. All right, beautiful. So let's turn our attention to the key elements we need to address both inside and outside the classroom. So rather than go bullet by bullet, I know some people may not be able to see, I'm going to offer several concomitant themes and questions to consider that will underscore these points. So when looking at things inside the classroom, we need to think about what are we teaching and why does it matter? For curriculum to be effective, we know it has to be relevant as well as resonate. How do we do what we do, but do it even better? To go from good to great, we need to support our faculty, staff, and managers in giving them everything that they require to do that. We all know uneven levels of academic preparation that can confound our ability to serve our students as well as frustrate our students themselves. So how can we better utilize our support services so that we can level up together? Instruction and student services, we know this. We need to have the best and latest technology when it comes to equipment and software to provide the educational experience that our students deserve. So how do we go beyond doing simply what's functional? When we talk about beyond the classroom, rather, we want to take a clear-eyed view at the sobering numbers around basic needs and security. Again, we're going to get into that a little later. We want to support students with the stresses and challenges that pertain to balancing family responsibilities, having enough money to live in this area, and any other challenge that they have to surmount in terms of being successful, including those challenges that affect our mental health, and their ability to do well in school. And finally, what do we need to do to make every campus feel welcoming? What do we need to do so people look at our Peralta colleges as places of refuge and inspiration, a beacon of hope and transformation? Okay. So you have 5 metrics that that really just anchor everything we're going to be talking about tonight. Successful enrollment, transfer level math and English in year one, persistence, completion of degrees and certificates, and transfer to a 4-year. Why are these things important? Disparities in successful enrollment, for example, might reflect differences in access to information or point to the effects of socioeconomic challenges. Early completion of transfer English and math often tells us whether students are receiving adequate academic preparation, support, and or advising. When we look at the persistence and completion rates, that shines a light on how financial insecurities, competing life responsibilities, and institutional practices, both on the instructional and student services side, can derail a student's ability to stay on track. And finally, transfer outcomes, looking at that highlights to what extent are we truly serving as a gateway to upward mobility. So that's why it's important to pay attention to these metrics. In closing, so I'm going to bring your attention to a couple of a few commonly used acronyms that you're probably going to hear throughout the night. I think sometimes those of us who are in this forget that not everyone is conversant in the nomenclature that we just kind of banter around. So DI, categorical, student equity and achievement program, and our SEP, student ed plans. Just kind of let that wash over you. You're going to hear them more than once for the rest of the night. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Renaya Johnson, who will share with you Berkeley City College's equity data, goals, and key strategies.
Good evening, trustees, Chancellor Gilkerson, college presidents, and community. I have the privilege of going over the equity plan for Berkeley City College, where we'll discuss some of those metrics that you just saw on the screen in action. So I wanted to begin with discussing what the process was in developing this plan at Berkeley City College. For us, we really wanted to focus on centering both faculty and classified voices, as well as our student voices. So we took two different approaches. The first approach to centering the student voices was through tabling, old-fashioned, sitting in the atrium, stopping random students and talking to them about their experiences at Berkeley City College and better understanding what barriers have been in place on their journey. Through that, we were able to get qualitative data, which we used to create the key strategies, which we will go over shortly. In addition, in September and October, we held special focus groups for some of our categorical programs. So this includes our LGBTQ students, our EOPS students, and our CalWork students. These students you'll see within the DI, so our disproportionately impacted groups. It was important as we got their input to better understand what would actually work for them as students. To begin centering the voices of our classified, we also spoke with classified individuals within these special programs. It was through their direct experiences serving with students that we were able to develop these key strategies to put into our plan for the next 3 years that will help guide us. And lastly, working with our faculty members who play an important role in many of the metrics that we see tonight, and better understanding how we can work across student services and academic affairs to better serve our students. The first metric that you see is successful enrollment. And with that, one of the things that we really noticed was how do our students begin to see themselves within the district? This begins before they step foot on our campuses as they're going through the application process. So you'll see on the screen our disproportionately impacted groups at Berkeley City College include Black African American students and white students. On the right-hand side, you're going to see the number of students that are needed within a 3-year period to close the full equity gap for this. So some of the key strategies that we developed here at Berkeley City College included culturally responsive community outreach. Again, how do our Black students see themselves here at Peralta? What services, what programs, what community can we offer them? We also wanted to talk about simplifying the application process. If our students are applying but not enrolling, what's stopping them? Is it financial aid? Is it classes? So for us, it's really understanding where are those barriers in place and how do we better outreach to ensure that those barriers are removed. Next is completion of transfer level English and math within their first year. This expands upon our previous DI group. You'll see Black African American students again, But this year, there's also some expanded groups as well when we start talking about intersectionality. So you'll see female students, LGBTQ students, and white students as well. Again, you'll see the numbers that are needed within the next 3 years to close these equity gaps at BCC. So one of the things that we started talking about is how do we implement an early alert program? How are we finding out the needs of our students at the beginning of the semester versus the end of the semester so that we're actually able to provide them the assistance that they'll need to successfully complete English and math? The second is you're going to see the culturally responsive classroom designs. So I'm very proud of the work that is happening amongst our faculty members at BCC with the Changing Approaches project. And so embedded in this, how do we ensure, again, that our students are receiving the services that they need in a culturally responsive way where they're better able to complete that English and math within their first year? The next is persistence to next primary term. So if you are beginning in the fall, are you continuing on in the spring? If you're beginning in the spring, are you continuing on in the fall? We have 3 DI groups at Berkeley City College. This is Black, African American, first generation, and Latinx students. Again, we talk about that identity, that sense of belonging. Are our students seeing themselves on the campus? Are they being able to fully embrace themselves, who their identity is, intersectionality? So we really wanted to focus on ensuring that we're able to strengthen that community, that we're able to provide academic support as needed through our learning communities, and that we're able to reinforce the assistance that they need to persist. We also wanted to create a warm handoff counseling model. So one of the things that's really important to know about the equity plans is we're looking at changing the process, not just one-off activities. So how do we change our counseling models to ensure that as students are continuing in their journey here, they have someone that they can know, who truly understands their process, instead of randomly trying to figure out which advisor or counselor is available to meet with them. So this is going to play a huge role in ensuring that they have someone on their corner that can assist them with their persistence. The next is completion of degrees and certificates. At BCC, we have 1 DI group, and that is male students. And so one of the things that we're looking at is how do we expand and center our male learning communities through AMEND and MOCAN, which is Men of Color Action Network. One of the things that came out of those conversations we were having with students is a lot of the males mentioned, you know, I'm embarrassed to ask for help. It's not very manly to ask for help. And so one of the things we really wanted to do is work around mental health wellness and start destigmatizing what it means to be a man, destigmatizing masculinity, right? Allowing our students to know that there is no shame in asking for help, to making sure that they reach those resources that they need to be successful. And so really making sure that we have this programming and these healing spaces in place so that our men are not being left behind in completion. The next that you're going to see is transfer to four-year college or university. This is our Asian population. The first thing that stood out to us was data disaggregation is needed. For us, that's a huge subgroup, and we want to understand where our students are struggling. So being able to understand where our Filipino students, our Vietnamese, Pacific Islander students are really struggling to better be able to provide resources. The second thing was building a transfer bridge program. So continuous conversations built around transfer, ensuring that they're connected with a dedicated transfer counselor who can assist them on their journey to transferring to a four-year college or university. The next is our comprehensive student educational plan. As Dean of Counseling, I'm really excited that this is one of the first times that we see this in our equity plan. And as President Johnson mentioned, when we look at these numbers of the number of our students who are actually receiving a comprehensive ed plan within their first year, there is a lot of work to be done. But the good thing is that these key strategies are going to put us on the correct path to making sure that our students have an ed plan by the time they finish their first year. This ensures that they have completion levels, that they understand the classes that are needed, and that they're not spending extra financial aid dollars to take extra classes and stay longer than they need to. So here at Berkeley City, there are three main groups that are our DI groups for our student educational plan. Those are our Black African American students, Latinx, multi-ethnic, and white students. On the right-hand side, you're going to see some of the key strategies. So I mentioned early about our early alert and case management integration. our proactive counseling model. So again, having a dedicated counselor who can reach back out to our students to ensure within the end of their first year, they have a full educational plan on file. And then we wanted to do some in-reach projects. So how do we have educational plan day campaigns specifically around midterms and really busy periods to ensure students aren't having to search for us, but that we can go out to where students are within the campus to ensure that they're able to have an ed plan completed. The second would be completing group counseling workshops that are major focused. So again, tying in some of this work to ensure that students have that support that they need with one another, but also with our counselors as well. And with that, I'm excited to hand off to my colleagues at the College of Alameda, Ree, Van Son, and Juliana, to speak about their strategies for these metrics at College of Alameda.
Good evening. Thank you. So I get the distinct privilege to introduce my colleagues, Juliana Garcia and Rhiannon Fallenfont. My name is Vanson Nguyen. I teach math at the College of Alameda. So I want to quickly highlight what's on you see on the left side. It's not quite a roadshow, but it was a series of visits to constituent groups about this program. And as a faculty member, seeing this and hearing this and getting our input is very, very, very important. So I want to highlight that piece. I also want to draw your attention to the right side about our approach. That frameworks that we used in developing this plan was anti-racist and anti-cultural, think counterculture. And the alignment is thinking of it as an ecosystem where there's intentional collaboration between student services and instruction. And I want to point out this one-time funding request process that is designed to fund instructional efforts focused on closing the equity gaps.
All right, so I'm going to get you kind of familiar with our data. So this is successful enrollment. This means that you apply to our college and then enrolled later. There's two different goals. It's eliminating the disproportional impact, which it means that it's without outside the margin of error. And then the second goal is actually eliminated to zero. So it's like the overall college percent. In a successful enrollment, we have our only DI group, which is white students. This is because that the base is 1,642 students. And so even though there's 90 students who are enrolling, there is a huge denominator still. And that's why the goals are in the hundreds, where there's 155 for the first goal and 187 for the second goal.
We have 3 strategies that we'd like to adopt for this metric. We have data-informed outreach. So we'd like a centralized multilingual platform that will support matriculating concurrent and non-credit students. We also have equitable access to education opportunities and enrollment. We'd like to focus on 3 priority groups: matriculating students entering directly from high school, concurrent and dual enrollment students, as well as adult learners. We also would like to the next metric would be strengthening pipeline and guided pathways. We will expand and strengthen our partnerships with feeder high schools, adult education, and community groups. Our overall student population additional strategies will be student-facing technology inclusive web design.
All right, so our next metric is completing math and English in their first year. And I just want to remind everybody, these are students that are just coming in, so it's their first year here. So this is our biggest amount of DI groups for a metric. But if you notice that all the student numbers are really low. So this is very doable and very able to get some of this out. As you can tell, our DI groups are African Americans, economically disadvantaged, females, first generation females, and Latina. And so their first goal, they're 10, 28, 19, 5, and 3. And those are completely doable to close those disproportionately impact.
Our 3 strategies for this metric would be placing onboard and early support. We would expand placement so DI students are placed directly into transfer level math and English, embedded support, academic support, tutoring, supplementary instruction, and co-requisite models to be embedded into transfer level math and English. We'd also would be equity-centered learning communities, expanding Emoja and other learning communities to link math and English with structured support.
The next metric is for persistence. Again, these are first-time students coming in, persisting from their first term here to their second term here. Our only DI groups is Black African American females and also white students. If you notice that the Black African females, it's one student. Completely doable to move forward into this metric.
The three strategies for this metric: proactive counseling and case management. Success teams will provide some early outreach, monitoring academic progress, and connecting students to resources. Expanding learning communities and belonging. We will grow Emoja and similar communities to serve Black and African American students. Clear pathways and academic support integration.
All right, our next metric is the completion data for the DI groups is males, just like you saw at the other college. I would like to state that if you look at the base year for this is exactly during the pandemic starting year. And so all the numbers are gonna be a little bit lower for the student counts. So the denominator is gonna be a little bit smaller. And also, if you look at our completion data overall for our students is 2.5 years for a full-time student at COA. And it is 6.5 years for a part-time student. So this is kind of one of the important things to look at, is to get the part-time students to start taking more classes and get the completion rate a little bit down.
The strategies would be proactive counseling and case management, cultural relevant learning communities and membership, embed guided pathways and accelerated completions.
All right, our next metric is transfer. This is also, if you look at the base year, this is right before our pandemic. And so the base is actually be a lot bigger for the students. Our DI groups is female and Latinx. And the numbers are pretty small here. If you notice, they're 2 and 3, completely doable. I know from our COA data that overall we've increased in transfer rate. So this is a very easy metric for us. But I would also like to state that the state is really looking into this. That's why there's an emphasis on the part. They actually ask for more information about what we're doing for transfer rates.
Our strategies for this metric would be proactive counseling and transfer guidance, strengthening transfer pathways and partnerships, strengthening CSU and UC partnerships, agreements and transfer-centered programs, learning communities and cultural responsive supports.
All right, so our last metric is student education plans. These are only counted if they're comprehensive. So we have 2 different ones, which is called abbreviated and one's comprehensive. Abbreviated is just like the first 2 terms, whereas a comprehensive takes the whole time there as our student and actually has our goal. With our numbers, we can tell that this is a metric that we could work with all students. But for our DI groups, we only have 2 DI groups, which is American Indians and Pacific Islanders. And the only reason those are DI groups is because we had 0 for those groups. And so it is something that we definitely need to work on. Our overall strategies for the overall plan is kind of doing embedded counseling, having case management, and having technology-based checkpoints that show us that where the students are hitting these metrics and also where we can reach our goals. And the data-driven approach to this planning is not only to track these goals as they're going through, but also to make sure that we're using these comprehensive student ed plans to plan our scheduling going forward. I would like to introduce Laney College team, Gary Alberry and Clifton Coleman.
So good evening, Board of Trustees, Chancellor, Presidents, community members. My name is Gary Alberry, and I'm the Dean of Student Success and Equity here at Laney College. And I'm here with my colleague, Clifton Coleman, who serves as our senior researcher and planning analyst. And, we're excited to present Laney College's equity data, goals, and key strategies that help guide the development of our 2025 through 2028 equity plan. So in developing our 2025-2028 equity plan, we took a shared governance approach where we went on a roadshow. I promised Chancellor we coined that first. And in doing so, we went to various constituent groups, including Associated Students, Faculty Senate, Classified Senate, as well as our Strategic Equity and Enrollment Development Committee, also known as SEED, as well as College Council. As one of my colleagues mentioned earlier, it was also important for us to center the voices of students and their experience. So through that, we gathered data this past fall via surveys, via email blasts, texts, and a flyer, as well as we held focus groups. One focus group was for our targeted population, which was foster youth. And then we opened up 2 additional focus groups for all students to participate. As a part of our SEED subcommittee, we examined both qualitative and quantitative data, recommended key strategies, and assisted in writing the plan this fall semester. And Clifton will now share some data.
So as Dean Albury mentioned, in developing our plan and choosing our intentional focus groups, we looked at the state-provided data, some internal data like course completion rates, and also student voices. What's behind me is our state-provided data for successful enrollment. You'll notice it's similar to what the other colleges presented, but just in a slightly different format. So on top, we have the overall rate for applied to enrolled in the same year, which for Laney College is 13%. And then in the table below, we have our DI population, the percent for the baseline year, and then the percentage points needed to increase to close the equity gap. So for example, looking at Black African-American female, the baseline rate was 11%, and then 2 percentage points are needed to increase to reach equity. You'll notice though that some of our DI groups do not equal, when the 2 columns are added, do not equal the overall rate. And that's because when looking at disproportionate impact, you're looking at that group in compared to all other groups minus the group that you're looking at. So for example, if you're looking at white students or other DI group in successful enrollment, the baseline year was 8%, and the percent needed to close the equity gap was 7%. So that means all other groups other than white achieved at 15%, and that's where the gap came from. Looking at our next metric, which is transfer level math and English in year 1, our completion of both in the first year was 9% overall. Our DI populations were Black African-American, foster youth, females overall, economically disadvantaged, and then first generation female. Persistence to next primary term was white, foster youth male, and then LGBT male. Completion of certificates and degrees, males overall, and then once again, foster youth. And then transfer to a 4-year university, our overall was 15%, and our DI populations were Asian, once again, economically disadvantaged, and once again, foster youth male.
All right, thanks, Clifton, for that. So looking at both state and local data, there were 3 DI groups that emerged continuously throughout our data. So we really wanted to be intentional about addressing the needs of these groups while still looking at how can we do institutional changes to support all students. So those 3 groups were economically disadvantaged students, foster youth, as well as first generation students. And Clifton will provide some more data on these 3 populations of students.
So what you'll notice is that these 3 groups encompass a wide part of our overall population. Economically disadvantaged is roughly 2/3 of our student population at 62%. On some state dashboards, you'll even see as high as 80%. And that's because they have more financial aid data from other campuses. And they also exclude high school K through 12 in some of their calculations. First generation is getting close to half of our student population at 42%. And then foster youth is 3% at around 550 students each year. You'll also see that these groups encompass a wide range of racial, ethnicity, and gender subgroups. So overall last year, Laney's student population was about 30% Latinx, 20% Asian and Pacific Islander, and 20% Black African American, and then 17% non-Hispanic white. We were about 50% female and 43% male, and then 7% unknown and non-binary, and that sort of gray sliver there. Economically disadvantaged is very similar to our overall population, but with a higher representation of Black African American students. First generation is predominantly Latin-A, so nearly 40% are Latin-A. And then foster youth is nearly majority Black African American, and specifically Black African American female at 58%.
Oh, one more.
We were also asked to look at comprehensive education plans. So just like the other colleges, we looked at our first time new matriculating students, which means students who don't have an associate's degree and also had a transfer, certificate, or associate degree goal. And looking at our cohorts, within the first semester, roughly 15 to 20% of our students completed a comprehensive SCP, while about 20 to 25% of our students completed it in 1 year. There weren't a lot of subgroups that stood out for disproportionate impact, but one thing that we did notice was that when we looked at age groups, particularly if you looked at under 25 versus 25 and over, nearly every subgroup under 25 was at or above parity, while every subgroup above 25 had a disproportionate impact, and a pretty wide one at that.
So in hearing all these various different data points, we have identified, several key strategies to supporting our students, but I wanted to just highlight a few because some of them may overlap with some of our sister campuses. So for access, we're looking as a college to hire a dedicated outreach coordinator to support high school and community engagement. For persistence from first term to second, we're looking to develop a centralized campus guide, which highlights available student resources available to students. For transfer level math and English in the first year, really wanting to leverage our learning communities to provide coordinated academic, social, and emotional support that helps students complete transfer level math and English within their first year. And then I'm missing a page, forgive me. For transfer, really looking to scale and promote transfer-focused college visits through various different learning communities. And really, I want to also highlight our CCC to HBCU transfer pathway. So giving students those opportunities and exposure. For completion, an almost finished campaign where we look at students that have completed 45 plus degree applicable units and really doing some targeted outreach to those students to let them know that they're almost there. And then for comprehensive student educational plans, really getting our counselors into the classrooms, into those gateway courses to do some in-classroom visits. So thank you so much. Welcome to Laney, and I will now turn it over to our Merritt colleagues.
I guess everyone's taller than me. Hi, good evening, Board of Trustees, Chancellor Gilkison, Presidents. My name is Angela Koo. I'm Dean of Counseling and Equity at Merritt College, and today I have with me
Nathan Pellegrin, Director of Research and Planning.
Great. So for our 2025 equity plan, we started with our fall student survey with, which went out to about 1,500 students and centered around equity and access. We also have our fall and spring summits where classified staff and student workers come together to collaboratively work and develop our institutional effectiveness plan. What I'd like to focus today is you will see a timeline on your right, but I would like to focus on the approach more than the timeline today because a lot of my colleagues have covered a lot of the areas, and I want to cover the overarching framework of what Merritt College is doing. In addition to the transformational Peralta project that we have, I want to focus on the intentional caring campus that is unique to Merritt College. Recently, I guess in August, the district rolled out the student services, student support navigator program. Merritt College has embraced this, and we have we have embraced the no wrong door approach. The no wrong door approach to students is students can come into Merritt College. There is no wrong door that any door that they come to will be a door that they will be warmly welcomed. So this training was part of a district-wide effort, and I want to say in November, we'll be hosting this to further implement the no wrong door approach. In also in alignment with the ecosystem, we hope to build on ensuring that all our program services and initiatives support equitable access and success. So I want to hand this over to Nathan for the data part.
So I'd like to walk you through some of the data slides, the outcomes of our students with respect to what was identified in the state data for our students and the disproportionately impacted subgroups. First, to take the outcome of successful enrollment. If you see those bars, there's comparison to the baseline, which is shown in orange. That shows, similar to what Laney reported, is 13% overall for the total cohort. So that means only 13% of that cohort is going on and enrolling in Merritt after application. So there's plenty of room for growth there, but the relative rates are much lower. You'll see for Native American, Alaskan Native, somewhat for Pacific Islander, Hawaiian Native, the white, and non-binary. So that indicates those relative rates that we need to pay attention to them. You'll see that what shows below in those numbers are those numbers of students needed to close the gap. And those are the numbers of students needed to fully close the gap to achieve parity, the full equity metric. So in the next outcome that we want to take a look at in our equity is persistence to the next primary term. You'll see that overall for the baseline, the comparison to the overall. Again, as Clifton explained, the baseline is here for comparison purposes, for informational. So you have a sense of what the overall outcome is. How the disproportionately impact statistic is inferred is actually a different calculation using the other group that's held out, as Clifton explained. But in this case, the persistence overall is 41% for these students in the equity cohort. The relative rates you'll see vary quite a bit with 2 or more, the groups for 2 or more, and the homeless quite a bit lower at 23 and 21% respectively. And the other groups, white, male, and LGBT. I'd like to note that there's asterisks down at the bottom under some of those groups. Those were groups that were identified as disproportionately impacted in previous years. So the state provides a 3-year window in looking at plan data and follows cohorts for 3 years and provides cohorts for each year. And in some of those years, some groups will be identified and others not. So the asterisk indicates that those groups were identified in previous years and we're tracking them as well. And so that's why they're shown here. So for transfer level math and English in 1 year, similar to the other colleges, we have quite a few groups identified. Black African American, Latine, white, first generation, foster youth, female, homeless, LGBT. And the baseline of 10% indicates, again, as previously stated, there's a lot of opportunity for growth here. Although I must say the rate and numbers of students completing this metric has grown considerably since 2019. Again, at the bottom, you'll see that these the numbers are very doable for identifying students for like a targeted, specific like a intervention or strategies to support this outcome. All right, next outcome, please. Let's see. Completion of degrees and certificates. You'll see here 7% overall for the cohort. That, again, something we want to lift up quite a bit across the board. But we'll see that these groups identified include Asian, first generation, foster youth, male, and LGBT. And note that the LGBT rate is 1 point higher than the baseline. That's because in the previous year, the rate was found to be lower and disproportionately impacted. And now transfer to 4-year, that overall rate of 21%, and the groups found 22% economically disadvantaged. Again, it was lower in a prior year. Latine, first generation, foster youth, were all also included as disproportionately impacted in our plan for this year. Finally, student education plans, specifically comprehensive student education plans. We'll see that we have among the 4 cohorts tracked for this metric that's reported to the state, yet the percentage of students that receive their comprehensive education plan within their first primary term is on average 20%. So this column, the first column for goal 1, that's on average 20%. And then the average for completing a comprehensive or receiving a comprehensive education plan by the first academic year is 25% on average. So a quarter, from a fifth to a quarter. That is a rate we'd like to increase, and some of the strategies that Dean Koo is going to outline are addressed specifically to that.
So thank you, Nathan. So improving the student ed plan is central to persistence and completion. And the student ed plan completion is one of the student success metrics also directly affecting our funding. So in this slide, you can see that the disproportionate impact group found here is the Latin A students at Merritt College. And recently, we have been hiring bilingual counselors, being intentional in making sure that our counselors are culturally competent to serve our students. And we also recently secured a full-time appointed counselor at Merritt College. So the overarching key strategies that Merritt College is embracing is that student services meets bi-weekly with our Office of Instruction for check-ins and making sure that our wraparound services are not duplicating themselves. We also have a Dreamer liaison that provides non-clinical case management services to our students to support enrollment and to develop their skills in advocating for themselves and their immigration status, which is currently most needed more than ever. We also, as for our math and English guided pathways, we have an upcoming MESA program, which will be up and running in the spring of 2026. Yeah. Transfer. In transfer, because Merritt College is an allied health campus, we have very strong transfers with our Cal State East Bay partners, especially with the ADN to our BSN program. We are currently also we're also in negotiation with Samuel Merritt University for some of our students that have obtained associate degrees at Merritt, and they can have a seamless pathways to a private university in downtown Oakland. We also want to work on our credit for prior learning, which is not just for our veterans or for our military, but also for our CE programs such as nutrition, where we have successfully awarded credits to students that have shown that we have validated the college level knowledge and skills that they have obtained from outside of the classroom environment. Title V regulations requires counselors to develop student-led plans. So I see a silver lining in all of this, even if overall we're not seeing very favorable numbers, but I am confident that moving forward, we will be more successful. Yeah, do you have anything to add, Nathan? I think that's the last one. Yep. So I would like to introduce President of College of Alameda, President Dixon.
Thank you so much. So board members, where we stand today is we must lean into our institutional will and leverage our resources, unafraid, unified, and unrelenting. When we think about the landscape of our administration and the challenges that we face, we must continue to press ahead, irrespective of what's happening at the state or federal level, and continue to serve our students in a united front. Our focus should be on united measurable goals across our district, addressing barriers and stretching ourselves out of our comfort zones and into spaces that center our students. Looking at our data and anchoring ourselves in that data to inform our work and make sure that we scale what works and that we get rid of or sunset the things that aren't serving our students well or serving our institutions well. This chart right here really just indicates the next steps for our colleges as we move together in aligning ourselves. And I think where I'd focus your energy on this slide is really the future direction. We have a laser focus on addressing how we continue to look at our fiscal situation and look at this particular funding stream and figure out how we can perform in the SCIF, the student-centered funding formula. And lastly, what I would share with you all is our collective approach in setting the standard. We are committed to setting the standard as Peralta College District, and all of the colleges today, I think, reflect that, working in uniformity and serving together. So we'd like to thank our board, our chancellor, for the opportunity to share our equity plans and our collaborative approach. We'd also like to give a special thanks to our faculty, classified professionals, and management teams for remaining focused on closing equity gaps for students and moving our institutions from a compliance to a culture of care. Most importantly, what I hope you've heard this evening, we'd like to extend our unwavering gratitude to our students for their engagement and feedback in the process, their perseverance in spite of the challenges they face in pursuit of their educational and career goals. It's inspiring to us, and it's why many of us serve. We highlight the challenges that our students encounter are beyond our control. Many of the things that we encounter as it relates to the reduction in our SNAP, as it relates to the reduction in our federal funding related to HSI and other programs that we have, those things are detrimental to our students. But we challenge ourselves to press ahead anyway and be creative about how we rise to the occasion and still meeting the needs. And we continue to interrogate our outcomes and strategize ways to respond in real time. So speaking of external challenges that are beyond our control, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, President Richardson and Dr. Helen Koo, to share insight about the Real Colleges Basic Needs Survey.
Thank you, President Dixon. My name is Denise Richardson. I'm the president of Berkeley City College, and I would like to express greetings to the president of Board of Trustees, to our chancellor, Dr. Gilkerson, colleagues, students, and community. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to first say that it is my privilege to transition the conversation from our equity plans to the very important topic of basic needs. Students who can't have reliable sources of food or housing find it difficult to think. They find it difficult to remember. They find it difficult to learn. And so without basic needs, we put them, or they find themselves in a very difficult situation. Everything we've learned about supporting equitable outcomes for our students has led us to the importance of taking a holistic approach to removing barriers and closing achievement gaps, particularly since 2 out of 3 students who attend California community colleges experience some form of food or housing insecurity, 2 out of 3 of our students. For many years, community colleges have understood the need to identify meaningful ways to address food insecurity and housing insecurity for students who struggle with these challenges while also working to pursue an education. In 2018, serious conversations began at the state level, and during the pandemic, it became abundantly clear that community colleges needed to do a better job of providing resources and information to students if we are truly committed to their academic and career success. I am particularly proud to be a member of a district who prioritizes this initiative. In 2021, the state approved AP 132, which formalized these efforts by allocating $100 million in funding to establish basic needs centers and support existing centers across all 116 community colleges in California. As of 2023, all community colleges in California have some form of basic needs support for students. Peralta has helped lead the way in creating a holistic approach to student success by creating thoughtfully designed basic needs programs at all 4 of our colleges. An important finding has emerged from the research of the College California report, and that is that basic needs and security is not just generally related to student success, it is specifically associated with grades that students earn. So I'd like to take your attention to the diagram you see on my left. You see that 58% of students who earn W's experience some kind of food insecurity. 62% have D's or F's. And then with housing insecurity, you see you see other statistics. 78% of students who have housing insecurity receive W's and so forth. So, and then you also see the similar data or the data associated with homelessness. So it makes a difference when these needs aren't met, even in terms of the grades that our students earn. And the grades that these students earn also translate into impact on transfer, impact on career access. So it's important for us to keep all of this in mind as we continue these efforts with basic needs. These fundings underscore the importance of basic needs programs and the direct impact they have on closing gaps in support of our ongoing goal of equitable student success, persistence, and completion. So with that said, I'd like to now introduce Dr. Helen Koo.
Thank you, President Richardson. All right, good evening, Board of Trustees, Chancellor, and Presidents. Let's hop into looking at basic needs and security at Peralta Colleges. So in a collaboration effort between RP Group and Chancellor Gilkerson, as well as the CCCCO, California Community College Chancellor's Office, a basic needs survey, nationwide basic needs survey was launched in 2025. And statewide, 102 community colleges responded to the survey. And at Peralta Colleges, over 3,000 students responded to this survey in spring 2025. And that is about 10% response rate, which is really good for a survey study. So the 3 basic needs and security indices or areas that was assessed in the survey include food insecurity. So students were asked, in the past 30 days, did you worry about not having enough food until you could buy food again? And were you afraid that you did not have enough money to buy the food? And not only is it food that's nutritional, but also safe. And the second indice was housing insecurity. So students were asked in the past 12 months, did you have financial limitations where you worried and could not pay for your utilities or your rent, or just were you also moving from different places to different places? And homelessness. This sounds similar to housing insecurity, but the housing insecurity category really taps into financial issues to pay for utilities and rent. For homelessness, students are considered homeless if they self-identified as being homeless, or if they said yes to living in areas such as couch surfing, or staying overnight at somewhere that's not usually considered habitable, perhaps in a public restroom, and so forth. So why is it important to study this? As President Richardson already talked about, it's really related. Basic needs insecurity is really associated with lower academic outcomes. And we all know it is also related to lower levels of happiness and a lot of additional life stress. So at Peralta College, we found that 2 out of 3 students are experiencing basic needs insecurities, where they may be experiencing any of the 3. And statewide, it's 67%. So it's very similar to the statewide percentage. And I also wanted to say that, is this a surprise to us all? This is a memory pop quiz where Clifton Coleman from Laney College, he also talked about economically disadvantaged students. We have over 60% of our students that are economically disadvantaged. So this really is reinforcing and consistent, and also puts into perspective how a lot of our students are experiencing basic needs insecurity. So let's take a look at basic needs insecurity across our colleges. We find, back up. We found that at Laney College and at Merritt College, our students are experiencing the highest levels of any types of basic need insecurity compared to statewide percentage. And in the statewide report conducted by Dr. Gilkerson, Chancellor Gilkerson, and RP Group, they found and compared basic needs insecurity between 2023 and 2025, and found that Berkeley City College students over time, even though it's not a cohort tracking study, they found that students in 2023 had much higher levels of basic needs insecurity than students in 2025. So it could be that some students from 2023 are indeed improving their basic needs levels over time, but it could also just be different cohort waves of students coming into Berkeley City College, that is experiencing less basic needs insecurity. Now let's look at the specific categories of basic needs insecurity. We see here that statewide, it is 46%. So that is the yellow line in the bar graph. And let's take a moment here and think about how even 46%, which is the statewide percentage, that's very high. You know, that's basically half the students statewide in California community colleges are experiencing food insecurity. And specifically at Laney College and Merritt College, we see higher rates. And overall Peralta rate is 48%. So really Laney College percentage of food insecurity is higher than the overall rates. Now for housing insecurity, we see again, Laney College and Merritt College have higher percentages of housing insecurity compared to the statewide. And homelessness, the statewide percentage is 20%. And we see here that Laney College, it is 23%. Again, statewide percentages are very similar to our overall Peralta percentage. And it's really at Laney College where we see a slight increase in the percentage of students who experience homelessness. So something that you all may be aware of is most of our students are part-time students. So we were curious, are basic needs insecurity percentages different between full-time versus part-time? And we may have some guesses as to, maybe due to different life circumstances, why part-time students or full-time students may have higher or lower rates. But what does the data tell us? The data is telling us that full-time students at Merritt and Laney have higher rates of basic needs and security than their part-time counterparts and relative to other colleges. So, certain groups of individuals, we were curious whether or not their experiences or background may also be associated with higher or lower basic needs security rates. And highlighted here are 3 groups, and these groups really echo some of the previous presenters that have talked about groups that are disproportionately impacted. So I want to highlight here African American Black students consistently across all 3 types of basic needs insecurity. They have the highest rates, followed by Latine for food insecurity and housing insecurity, and Pacific Islander and Native Hawaiian students. We also measure basic needs and security among students who self-identified across different gender groups and sexual orientation. And you can see here, female students have high levels of basic needs and security. Specifically, our students who self-identify as lesbian. And you can recall back to some of the earlier presentation, female students were disproportionately impacted across many of the metrics. Something to note here that's quite interesting is male students, although they fare relatively, when I say quote unquote okay compared to statewide, again, statewide percentages are high. For food insecurity and housing insecurity, male students fare relatively okay, but they have a higher rate of homelessness compared to when compared across the 3 basic needs insecurities. So even though they're not experiencing housing and food insecurity, somehow our male students are experiencing relatively more homelessness. So we are curious as to how students with disability versus without disabilities, whether or not students with disabilities are experiencing more or less basic needs and security. And very unfortunately, students with any type of disability have higher rates of basic needs and security. And this includes all the disabilities listed here: ADHD, learning disability, autism, physical disability, chronic illness, psychological disorders, and specifically students with physical and learning disabilities have highest rates of basic needs insecurities across all 3 categories. We were also interested to see and learn if students with different life circumstances are experiencing different levels of basic needs insecurity. And again, echoing and similar findings from previous presenters, foster youth students, very, very high basic needs, food insecurity, housing insecurity, and homelessness. And other 3 groups include students who had already served in the military or are single parents, and also those who are just as impacted and incarcerated. So one of the nuances about this survey that was conducted across California community colleges is that RP Group, they fine-tuned and customized the survey to add a few items that ask students their usage, awareness, usage, and reliance on the basic needs services at the colleges. And overall, 60%, not on this slide, but 60% of our students are aware of the basic needs services. 20% were not aware. So that really is a population of students that we really need to tap into and figure out how we can better share and communicate this information so it can serve more students. And then those students who utilize the basic needs services, they were asked how reliant they were in terms of, do you have other ways to access services, or is signing up for the transportation support that we provide entirely what you need and what you depend on? And we see here that it's really the transportation services, mental health services, food, public benefit application services that we provide here at Peralta Colleges are all very helpful for students that are completely reliant on these different support systems. So future work and recommendations, as we noted in the analyses, we did find that full-time students surprisingly do have higher rates of basic needs and security. So this reinforces the need to really look at our students in terms of their life circumstances, full-time versus part-time. This is very important for even future work and future research. And in terms of service utilization, instructional mode, imagine students who are taking classes primarily online, right? Perhaps they're not learning about these basic needs support service centers as well as those students who are in person. So I volunteered at a Laney College food pantry before, and I saw the line of students. It was so impressive. So if other students see that, then they learn about it as well. Oh, sorry. So second, we really need to try and incorporate more of understanding and sharing the knowledge of basic needs support services as really incorporated into part of the student journey. As we recall, 2 out of 3 students are basic needs insecure. So we really need to make this a priority where students that come through the doors of Peralta Colleges, that they really understand what services can help them. And lastly, this just all overall reinforces, again, more communication, more outreach efforts to increase the awareness and utilization of the basic needs services on campus is really important. Thank you.
All right. Hi. We're there. This is the last slide. You know, as Dr. Koo, Dr. Richardson, other people have been saying, we presented on these 2 items tonight because they're related. You see the same things showing up, the same categories of students showing up. It's not a coincidence that that's happening. And foster youth, for example, were consistently on the list. So the last slide has 2 main points. The first is, I want you all to know the colleges are doing a lot of things already. We are working hard to try to close equity gaps. We're working hard to meet student basic needs. And the packet that got printed out and given to each of you at your table is a snapshot of the 4 colleges' basic needs and basic centers work that they've been doing this year and last. And it was my pleasure to give many of you a tour of the food pantry that we have downstairs. So we're working on that. You've now heard plans for more equity work across all the different colleges. And if you remember when we were at Merritt about a month ago, that entire study session was dedicated to projects and programs that we have at the colleges that are designed to help decrease equity gaps. Also, if you remember back at Merritt, at the end of the presentation, pretty much the first or second question from somebody on the board was, so how can we help? Well, got some answers. You can help by using your role as a trustee to be an advocate for the things that the colleges need. The basic needs money that is supporting all of these programs is something that could go away. So we need to continue to be advocating for that at the state level. Also, categorical programs that we have that serve economically disadvantaged students, specifically EOPS, for example, those are set where you have to be enrolled full-time in order to be in those programs. As Dr. Koo shared with us, 75% of our students are enrolled part-time. So there's an opportunity for advocacy on changing those programs at the state and opening them up such that we can have more of our students eligible for those life-changing programs that the full-time students get. Finally, there's room for diversifying the funding streams and anything that you can do to help connect us with organizations, community organizations, places that are willing to donate. That's definitely is going to be appreciated. And if you have community groups that you work with that you could help connect the colleges with, we certainly would appreciate that as well. Lastly, on a point of personal privilege, it was my pleasure having all of you here today for the groundbreaking and showing off the Laney campus. I want to say thank you to the Laney team who's sitting out here, even though they've been here all day. And it's been a really special day. And I thank you all for that. Now it goes back to the chancellor.
Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for our incredible presenters. Thank you so much. So trustees, I understand tonight was a lot of data. These data presentations are part of required plans that our district does. And so what I thought I might do is just to provide some context on the way in which the data works, because I understand there's some questions. So for each of the areas that the colleges are to report on, successful enrollment, right, transfer, level math and English in year one, persistence to the next primary term, et cetera, there are different cohort years of data that the state provides. So what the state says is you're making a 25 to 2028 plan, but you're going back. So for instance, transfer is within 3 years of completion, then you're looking at year 4 of the data. And so each cohort is looked at individually. So what I'm going to ask Mark to do is just bring up so I can contextualize for you the College of Alameda slides, which will explain the cohort years that were looked at. So if you go to successful enrollment, Mark, let me just briefly to provide context for trustees. So here you'll see what happens is we looked at the 2022-23 year. So all of the colleges looked at data from 2022-23 of their first time students. It's a smaller cohort of students that are first time in college students. They take a look at that data and they find an overall rate for the college. So overall student population, successful enrollment was 11.4%. Where there was disproportionate impact is that white students only successfully enrolled at 5.5%. So that's kind of how that is. So they looked in that year at 2022-23 as the baseline year for the data. If you go to the next year, transfer level English math, 2022 and 2023 were the same cohort year that we used. So we're using the same year. So 2022-23 data is our baseline year for most things. How if you go down to persistence to next primary term, it's 2021-2022 data. So unfortunately, the data vision, and you can go on to the data vision warehouse for the state, gives each college their data based on different cohort years, based on what the metric is measuring. So if you go to the next slide, Mark, 2019-2020 is for the completion of degrees, because remember what we're trying to look at here is the disproportionate impact of are they completing it within 3 years. So we have to go back multiple years to see how that cohort did. Does that make sense? So even though we're in 2025, we're going back to look at past data to see where students were at that time period. So we're measuring ourselves on a 3-year indicator there. So that sort of, so each of the colleges presented the data in a little different ways. Ultimately, the cohort year, it matters. That's how we set the benchmarks. But really what they're doing is using the data to set the benchmark for how they'll go about doing the intervention strategies and things they did. And so when you measure the disproportionate impact, there are identified groups who are far off that overall student percentage. And so that's where you see the groups, and that's what the plans ask us to do. So I'm hoping that clarifies a little bit, but I'm happy to answer questions and to give you more information as well.
Can we go to page 16 on your slide deck? That was the first one you just pulled out for the College of Alameda. And Chancellor, thank you very much. And thank you to the staff. It's complicated. It's hard to get across. And one of the things that I'm getting is a lot of work going on thinking about this. So our confusion isn't any criticism of the staff. Let me just be really
absolutely.
clear about that.
It's confusing for us.
Yeah. So if we look at page 16 and we're looking at the third box there with that number of 391, that's the overall student population that they're giving you numbers for in the data set. Why is it only 391 out of all the students at the College of Alameda?
First time, so remember, it's a defined thing, first time in college students, like, so, right, successful enrollment. So the group is small. Remember, our enrollment's small, so it's not every student that's at the college. It's a particular group of students who are at the college. So that's what you're looking at.
Okay. And so that's why these cohorts are so small.
They are.
And we're looking at tiny little numbers, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly.
It's not representative of the entire population. It's really just a tiny slice of it.
Right. We have students who are coming back for continuous education who already have degrees. These are students who are not degree seekers. They're not our dual enrollment students. These are first time in college students. So the cohort sort of gets smaller based on what it is, right? So we serve a whole plethora of different students.
So let
And
me-
remember, our enrollment also was a lot lower during these year timeframes too, right? So we're measuring oftentimes years that were impacted by the pandemic. So that also has made the number smaller. So the N is smaller. So Dr. Johnson in the beginning, and this is sort of what the overall conversation has been with the colleges, has been, while the disproportionate impact in some of these numbers feels really small, like one student, like whatever, like whatever, we recognize we have a lot of work to just do for the overall, like improving in successful enrollment, improving transfer for any student who wants to do it. Even though they're giving us a slice of data to work on, we still recognize that it's much larger than that.
Okay, so just to be really clear, that 391 students in that particular year represents first-time college students. So if they'd been to college 20 years ago, they don't count. If they were there 3 years ago, they don't count.
Correct, sir.
Okay.
New first time in college students who do not have degrees and are
All
not
right.
dual enrollment.
Okay, good. I think that clarifies. Now, can I ask a question?
You can ask as many as you'd like.
Is that okay? So one of the things that I really liked was kind of laying out where our targets are, and then we would jump to the kind of strategies, and that was kind of cool. The part that I was kind of waiting for was the second half of the presentation where we were looking at the basic needs stuff, right? Because it seems to me that there's all that stuff that we can't impact. Like we can have great pedagogy and culturally responsive curriculum and all that stuff. But if somebody doesn't have a place to study, or they can't afford to eat, or they have to go to work, well, then we need a different strategy for that. And I guess what I was trying to understand is, what's our theory of that equity gap? So we've got different equity gaps, presumably different populations, and each one of those populations may have something in common, may not, but I'm not reading that out of this study. And I'm sure that there was a lot of discussion going on among various working groups. Like, we could understand this population and we can surmise from our focus groups or from other data, here's why that group is failing. And what I would have loved in this presentation is that throughput line. So here's the data, here's some basic needs things, here's our understanding of that cohort, and based on that theory, here's our model of how we're going to address that. And it's probably in there somewhere in your thinking, but as I was looking at it, I didn't quite follow it as much. And part of that, frankly, was just my confusion about the data. But I think understanding our theory of failure and our theory of success would help me better make have a coherent understanding of why the plan should work. What's our theory of why it might work? I don't need an explanation for all the cohorts right now. I'm just thinking out loud. Thanks.
So I think like the framing at the beginning of the presentation and sort of at the beginning of the presentation and really the wrap up sort of at the end. So President Johnson and President Dixon, we're really trying to say that we see that there are stuff inside the classroom and inside counseling and these kind of things that we know we can restructure, think about differently based on the voices of students that have basically told us their stories, and each of the colleges took an approach that had that. what is beyond the classroom and is sometimes very hard for us to measure or understand, but we can look anecdotally at data. So unfortunately, what happens with the basic needs statewide report is, right, we're measuring change between years. The last time we did the study was in 2023. Now we're doing it in 2025. The data is still the same. 2 out of every 3 community college student is saying they have a basic needs insecurity. But what's happening is it's not the same group of students. So you can't empirically actually make a deduction that this equals this. But what we're surmising is we're saying, because we're hearing it from our students and saying these things, that their inability to housing, food, or transportation have stability in that does impact them. And so that's what Dr. Richardson was showing with the rates of students who self-reported that they had to withdraw or fail a class was because they had higher rates of insecurity. So while again, we can't say person for person, right? We can't make a correlation. I love looking at Trustee Johannes, who loves my my kind of statistic speak, but right, we can't actually make the direct correlation, but we're inferring a relationship between that. And so what I saw in the strategies, and I know it was hard because it was a lot that we were trying to present to you tonight, is that I think that what they're trying to say is we're interweaving those things. So how does basic needs not sit on the side? How is basic needs actually wrapped together in the ways in which we're thinking about the services and support? So if that's the transfer bridge program, how did those folks know? If it's the API transfer center liaison at Berkeley City College, how are they understanding what wraparound basic needs support is for communities? How are we thinking about those things, you know, those key strategies? How are faculty in the classroom understanding what the basic needs work is? So as we look across the idea that SNAP benefits or CalFresh, because of the federal shutdown, is happening, how are we getting out the message to faculty and staff that says this is the way our basic needs centers are rising to help support students in a time which is going to be even more insecure for them? So I think what we're trying to say is it's all been a little dislocated, is probably what I would say is the overall kind of thing. And how do we integrate all of this more, both at the college level and across the district? And so that's actually the transformative work that I think's been having, is like, we can see that there are patterns across the 4 colleges in terms of similar strategies and things that we need to work on. How do we kind of work on those together? And so that's about this really introspection that we want to do, the single-minded focus on outcomes, and really creating frameworks for student support so that all students are getting the same piece, which is similar to the illustration, I believe, Merritt College gave about the no wrong front door, right? Stopping being a barrier to students when they come to us and say, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't happen at Merritt College, and never saying anything else, versus training our student ambassadors and our staff to say, oh gosh, you know what? Merritt College doesn't have that, but goodness, Laney College has that program. Like, let's get you going. So I think it's about a reshaping of an ecosystem for how we support students.
Last thing I'll say is it seemed to me that the big opportunities that we could take advantage of if we properly understood them was the gap between between applying and then actually ended up taking the class. It looked like 80-something% disappear.
Yes.
That's shocking. And then the other one is the persistence. If we're losing 50% of our cohort every semester, we're in trouble. So there's some opportunities that if we better understood them. Anyway, thank you so much.
Yep.
Yes, Chancellor. Thank you, everybody, for this presentation. Raised a lot of questions. Hopefully we'll find some answers at some point. But on the question of people applying and not successfully enrolling, my understanding is OUSD at one time, and I don't know if they still do, is every graduating or every senior fills out an application to Peralta, whether they're going to school here or not. And I don't know whether that's impacting the numbers or not. I mean, it seems like it would be.
Yes, absolutely. It is, right? So and we appreciate them doing it, right? Everybody wants somewhere for a student to make sure that they have a place and that they know. And we've had more intentional partnerships with OUSD, growing those with our dual enrollment, those opportunities, but students do. And so what happens is, where is our infrastructure around actually supporting those students and making sure those who don't go to a 4-year college or university or choose not to enroll or go straight to work are thinking about us as like a pathway to it. So I think it does inflate the data a little bit. And then in addition, we could, again, there are a lot of strategies that the college each talked about that actually could move us towards getting more students to enroll and be more mindful about the ways they're onboarded. And certainly the student education plan data is some of the things that gets to a question for us about persistence and knowing the pathway. When you're walking in the door, do you have a plan? And when we look at the data with 6,000 plus students without a comprehensive ed plan after the first year, you kind of wonder, how, that, so that's an area where we could really hopefully get persistence to continue to go up. So I think that there are some key strategies, including that. But if you spend a lot of time on the outreach part, time, energy, money, and you can't keep them here, right? Like, what are we doing? And so we need to work on the both external and the internal work for our district.
So the other question I had was about the numbers around the student education plans. It seems like have pretty low percentages there, and I don't know if it's just because of the way the numbers are skewed, but it seems to me that I know there's been a lot of talk around the 50% rule, whether counseling's in or out and whether that's impacting it. But if we were going to serve, say, 50% of our students with SEP plans, it seems like we'd have to hire a whole bunch more counselors. And I don't know how our budget's set up for that. I mean, it's
So it's a really great question. And I think it's two separated questions, trustee, frankly. So we are bound in terms of like our funding and those particular things around the 50% law. And you're correct that the way the things are looked at right now, counselors and librarians fall on the outside of 50% of your dollars should be spent on instruction, direct instruction to students. So unfortunately fall out of that unless they're teaching a course or whatever, or those particular things. We vehemently, most of us disagree, right? A lot of us in the field feel like that is really made it more difficult, especially given all the outside of the classroom things that we're contending with and supporting the support of our students. We have a great group of counselors in our district. We have a number of counselors at all of the colleges. I'll just say I started my career my community college career as a counselor, so I recognize the support. I think that there is room, frankly, for us to reimagine the way we counsel, and you heard this in every single presentation, right? Do the old models of counseling still work? Is it the one-to-one, I do a comprehensive ed plan? How are we leveraging guided pathways and plans that have already been built by instructional faculty, understanding what a pathway would look at and a stackable potential to help foster students going on? How are we actually leveraging students to students with facilitation by a counselor to think through, like, how do you develop an education plan? So I think that there's a both and. I think absolutely we could always use more faculty, counseling faculty, other things, but I also think that we have the time and the moment is now to really rethink the way we're even approaching student education plans and sort of a model. We are now in an age where a student could actually put in, like, I want to go to Laney College and get a degree in whatever. You could stick it in an AI and it can give you an ed plan. I mean, it's sort of like we've got to like jump to the term and the time and really think about students who are using things in a different way. So I think we can actually be very, very innovative in our approach. And it doesn't necessarily just mean that we have to hire more. I think it's how do we prune to grow, think about our resources and retooling them, and actually when we're asking for the interventions to happen. And so some of the things the colleges have said is about case management, is about actually thinking through, giving, like, hey, this is your guided pathways cohort. I'll use Professor Gassis over there, right? Like any student who says they're in journalism, which counselors like going, and connecting directly with those students. So I think that there's just options for the ways we can do it. So it may be that we need more counselors in an assessment, but it also could mean that we could be thinking the way we're using those resources.
So my last question is, could you repeat the numbers? I've heard them often, but I forget them sometimes. The difference between the state per student expenditures on CSU and UC versus community college and K-12?
I mean, you're going to get me in trouble, trustee. I know I'm over the top of my head. So disclaimer for everybody who's watching and whatever, but let's just say, I think I could do a quick Google search, but it's like we get like 12,000 per full-time equivalent student, right? Where K through 12, UC and CSU get upwards of 25,000 per full-time equivalent student to 30-something thousand per a full-time equivalent student. So we are like tens of thousands of dollars less per pupil or per student, per scholar funding than the other systems. And I can look it up really quickly to give you the exact numbers, but it's quite significant of a difference between what we're being asked to do. And to your, I'll just use this moment on my soapbox just to say when we educate, 2.1 million students and 70% of those students are first generation and students of color, more Black and brown students are going to community college to then transfer to four-year colleges and universities. I have a serious issue with the state who underfunds California community colleges. And I just think you're not going to finish or help support or the work that we're doing on the ground and the work we're asking lots of people to do on very shoestring budgets, to be able to make it happen. And we are in hold harmless right now because of the funding formula. So it's even harder for us. So I am very proud of this district, this team who came together tonight to analyze the data despite circumstances, to think through the transformation of our district. But it is pretty significant difference.
So to me, it seems like part of our political job as trustees is to address that funding gap, because they're asking us to run a horse race with 2 legs instead of 4 legs. And that's going to be a loser every time.
Hear, hear.
Okay, yes. So I just have a clarifying question. I'm not sure who can answer, but regarding the transfer level math and English, I just want to know if all students were incorporated in this data. And I ask only because I assume a certain number of students do not want to take transfer level because they don't plan on transferring, or they're taking a couple of courses and they're only doing a certificate. And so if we're including all of those, perhaps in the future, we will look like we just sort of never get parity regarding that. So I'm just wondering how are we taking the data?
So it's again, a similar cohort, first year in college students. So first year and with a degree, like asking for a degree. So students who've had an ed goal of a degree and are first year in college, we're trying to get them to complete transfer level in English and math in the first year. So it is a similar size cohort.
But some degrees don't require transfer level, correct?
Well, they all of our degrees require transfer level English and math for an AA degree.
Because when I was asking, but I looked it up. For example, cosmetology, you get an AA, but it's not required. Right? Before I asked my question, I wanted to make sure that I'm not trying to, I really just wanted the answer. Right.
State requires us to have students be prepared at the college level. So they have to be able to be at transfer level math and English in their first year. So that is the calculation, irrespective of whether a student is thinking they want to transfer. As long as transfer is a part of their net goal, they'd be counted within that big set.
So an associate degree requires transfer level English and math or college level English and math. But if you're doing a certificate program or something like that, you don't have to take all of the general education to get the degree.
I don't believe in that particular metric that goal is taken into account. So I do think it is all first time. Yeah.
Yeah, all first times.
And so based on that, I feel it's going to be more difficult to gain parity, to achieve parity if we're collecting information from all students. That is all.
I have a question that's maybe basic. You went through, and thank you for this presentation. It was a lot. My brain's a little fried from all the data, so I have to take some time and sit with it. But I'm wondering about, we saw on the left side or maybe the right side of each presentation, the process it went through to get here, to get to the data, and then to get to the shared strategies. And I wonder if you can speak, Chancellor, about the what the process is for implementation and what that looks like, to make sure we're integrating across different needs, basic needs, academic. Yeah, what does the process look like for implementation?
So each of the colleges are working directly. So the plans have gone through governance. So they've started with hearing from community, getting feedback, looking at their own data, and developing out a plan that is being submitted to the state, which you all will actually officially approve their plans in November at the meeting. And then the colleges, through either their student equity committee or whatever body at the colleges, and often it's sitting with the dean, and many of them presented tonight, are working to integrate that work and these key strategies and implement them at the colleges. So they're doing that work within the institution for the way in which it's set up. And then across the colleges, this is kind of what we're demonstrating again, is the way that the 4 colleges are working together with the presidents, the vice presidents across, the deans, are really looking at where are their strategies where all of these things are hitting together, and how could we have economies of scale, do things similarly so that students have a similar experience no matter which college they go to, because we know they swirl across the colleges. And then also coming to stop working at cross purposes, but saying, how do we leverage our funding actually to support something together? So that may be a shared contract for a basic needs sort of service that we want to do if we wanted to offer every table across the colleges for food insecurity or something, versus one college doing one thing and another. So I think we're working in multiple levels, both at the college, local level, and then district-wide to kind of do the implementation. So the colleges will get their plans approved through their governance bodies. Those will come through officially to you all, but they're all in the process of those last approvals. And then they'll begin to implement the plans and give regular reports to the state chancellor's office on actually the progress on those plans. And I was able to find the data, trustee. So for the 25-26 proposed budget, it was the full-time equivalent students was approximately 13,000 for the California community colleges, 22,416 for the California state universities, 36,119 for the University of California, and K through 12 per pupil funding was about $22,000.
Go ahead.
Just one last comment, just a shout out to Nathan and Cliff, because I think you all recognize the level of befuddlement that the trustees were going through as we were listening to the data. And it wasn't so much that there was an incredible amount of data, but I think we just weren't really kind of understanding specifically what we were looking at. And so pointing out the baseline and the delta between that really opened up our eyes. I have to say that I've never seen the data presented in this particular way. And what I really loved about it was the bringing together of the basic needs with our students and our equity plans. Like that, I thought was important, and a bit kind of, it took me a while to settle, and I think I'm still settling, but I think we need to continue to do that because it is quite revelatory in terms of what we realize we need to do, what we realize you all are doing, but also it's never enough, right? We have so much more work to do. And just 2 other comments. I think what also stood out to me is that as I think President Dixon, you were saying, I'm not exactly sure, but our categorical funds are only for full-time students. And the reality of the matter is our enrollment is 75% of part-time students. And I do believe, I think many other colleges are ruminating on that that conundrum. But if there is any district that I believe can figure out a way to make our system or move or pivot our system from the way that it is, which serves only full-time students, but helps us or helps our part-time students even more so, I do believe that it is this district. So, and of course, we're going to have to go to legislative initiatives and advocacy and that, but I do believe that we have movers and shakers here that are going to be able to move us in that direction because we've gone on too long having a system that really prioritizes full-time students when for such a long period of time, we have known that a majority of our students system-wide really are part-time. And thank you all for all the work that you did tonight. And in general.
I want to just raise two final things that I was thinking about. I really appreciated the no wrong door strategy. And it occurs to me, though, then that requires a kind of universal training of all of our personnel to understand how to do an assessment and then how to direct people. And that my other thought was, given the high proportion of students who are online who you just never have contact with anymore, I think we need, I appreciated Trustee Gonzalez Brito's question about implementation, because I think as we think about both that and then also thinking about the online student, I mean, I think of the many times where I've had a student, I'm able to sit with them after class or before class or in office hours and figure out like what's going on. And then I'll like walk them over to counseling or financial aid or whatever it is. And that it's way harder to do in that environment. And so I'm looking forward to, as we move to approval of a plan, reading a little bit about implementation on some of this, because I think it's super difficult. Anyway, I'm really appreciative of how hard people are working in this district. Cindy, I think you're right. If there's a district that really can do it, I know the people who work here, and you all are amazing. Yep. So we'll figure it out if anybody can figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I echo a lot of my colleagues' comments on this. One thing I want to give appreciation for is the last slide where there is a section that says assistance from the board. And that seems to be a question that I tend to ask. So how can we help? What can we do? So maybe as a follow-up to this conversation, when we've had some time to really sit with this information, maybe we can have a brainstorming session, Chancellor, and talk about how we can utilize relationships with the state and other community partners to be able to advocate for these needs.
I really appreciate that, Trustee Delphine Polk. I think it really, your support and really honestly, the board support has really been so helpful over the last 2 years. I feel like the district community, what I've heard over and over again, we saw it actually very publicly displayed at the College of Alameda ribbon cutting. It is a new day where really folks are feeling the support from you trustees and being engaged and understanding what, is going on and where we need some key support to help us move the needle when you look at these things. And so just appreciate always your willingness. And Trustee Hannes, thank you so much again for that question. I apologize for mishearing the piece. And so I just really appreciate it. You're right. Some of these metrics are very difficult for us to kind of get to. And so, how do we continue to iterate? So I appreciate your patience with my mishearing that. Thank you, Clifton, also for making the correction. It takes a village.
I just wanted to make it known that some things may not be attainable there, even though we're doing a great job. That is all. The numbers may not match.
Appreciate that.
Good evening. This is on? All right, lovely. Yeah, again, thank you for all of this, seeing the data. It's a little bit, but I just like to share a personal comment and personal story of mine of my first experience this semester going to the Basic Needs Center, which was about a month ago. I think I had 10 minutes in between something and class, and I was like, oh my God, I'm hungry, and walking out and going to get food. I was like, so I decided to go down to the Basic Needs Center, and I was like, okay, well, I know they have bars there, whatever. I was not expecting a sandwich. I don't know how many people know this, but there's actually like little prepared meals that students can get there once a week. And I was able to go there, and I was like, wow, the sandwich is really good. I was able to go to class, and it's kind of a morale boost. I was able to be more engaged. I was a lot more happier, and I'm sure the teacher was happy because I was more engaged. The students were happy because I was more engaged, and it was just awesome at the end of the day. I mean, it kind of made my day just knowing that there's going to be the safety net of being able to go get a lunch, kind of whatever I need. It's kind of a free get out of jail free card for a lot of people. So to that, I say thank you. Thank you for the Basic Needs Center. Thank you to the food program for existing. It helped me out in a pinch, and I'm sure it will in the spring and this semester going forward. So thank you to that. And thank you very much for the presentation and seeing the data.
A wonderful presentation. What was kind of comforting to see as a student, in especially the student equity plan across the 4 colleges, was the importance of having either dedicated counselors or just proactive counselors in general. I know for me, when I first came here, I thought that I was gonna have to do everything on my own, because in high school, never really went out to a counselor. It was kind of scattered, and I thought the same thing would happen here at community college. Soon after, though, I actually got a dedicated counselor, specifically with EOPS. And through that, I was actually able to set up recurring meetings. And meeting with the counselor went far beyond just trying to figure out what classes I need, but actually my success outside of the classroom. So specifically with basic needs and figure out like financially what my options are at community college and how I can kind of get emergency grants or stuff like that. And it really created a safe place. And I think it really does start with general counseling, but it goes a lot deeper with programs like EOPS, like Umoja, API, and MESA, who have those dedicated counselors. These counselors have, I believe it was mentioned earlier as well, but they're hired and they are kind of, I think the word was like culturally relevant, culturally like similar to the students they're helping. And I think that, again, builds that strong relationship with students that, especially in DI groups, pushes them to actually go back to counselors to get either help with classes or just outside of classroom success. And what was mentioned earlier, which I think is really important, but actually advocating for trying to open up things like EOPS to part-time students. I did not know it was only for full-time students. I know there are requirements that you have to meet and that you have to continue with, but like having some sort of counselor who can share like knowledge with me, especially with EOPS being for low-income students, it is very empowering knowing that I have like that specific person there for me. And yeah, I think just counseling in general too, I think it's very strong and students should know about it, but there's always room for improvement there, especially with going just beyond simple classes. As the chancellor mentioned earlier, like, you know, the AI can pretty much generate you a class schedule, but counselors really ensure, like, as a student, is that schedule right for you? Can you take on extra classes? Can you take on less classes? That's something that through repeated meetings with the counselor, they're able to understand, like, you know what, you are built for this, or, you know, maybe you should ensure that you're actually learning in these classes and not just taking them to look good for admissions, especially if you're transferring. And yeah, that's it.
Do we have any other comments? Ready to close the meeting?
We are. Thank you so much. Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.